Assalamu alaikum, fam. Hope you're doing well. So, there is this very serious topic that I want to discuss with you today, and it builds upon one of the last videos I talked about, where the atheist TJ Kump on Modern Day Debate debated a Muslim brother, and in that debate, the atheist TJ, he said he would give crack to his son if his son wanted it. And he said, drugs are cool. Drugs are good and fun and bring happiness. So I want you to think of the drug called Flaka. Flaka. It's called other names, but bath salts, they're similar to that, synthetic drugs, okay? They're very cheap. So do some research and watch how those people react in the streets. It breaks your heart and looks nothing short of demonic possession. It's an overriding of someone's consciousness to the point where they're flopping around on the ground like a fish out of water. Some of them scream the entire time. Their body temperature overheats, so they rip their clothes off. They roar at people. They attack pedestrians in the street. And I want you to see that image so that when you ever witness something like that, God forbid that you do, but look at it and say, who allowed this to happen? Who promoted this? Who sold it? Who manufactured it? Who made it easier to access? Who's being soft on crime? Which party advocates for this? Which ideology advocates for this? Now, mind you, the leftists and the atheists who glorify, certain anarchists as well, who glorify this position, right? They might argue, oh, well, we'll give them a building where they can go in and pay money to do that. Mind you, who wants a building like that in their neighborhood? Who wants a building that lets addicts go in there and flop around on the floor? Why would we want to facilitate that in society? Why would we want to reward people who manufacture those products to have a market shelf to sell their goods? We should not make it easier for them to manufacture and sell their products by displaying it in a store and allowing people to go in. It also puts a lot of bad role models for children. So as you're walking to the store, your child points, what's that? Oh, that's a place where people get high on these things and flop around. Bars are bad enough. Okay? Bars are bad enough. But to have a place where people can go use hardcore drugs and then trying to convince your child to never get curious and go and do that, it can snatch the soul of your kid. Once someone becomes a deep addict, they carry with them for the rest of their life that panic and worry that they'll go back to using drugs. And when you witness someone on Flaka, it's your own loved one, and they're twisting and convulsing and doing all these weird things and screaming and roaring and biting themselves, you're not going to think it's cool, that this is freedom. The founding fathers did not mean freedom in that way. They'd be horrified. They'd probably hang those types, right? The Enlightenment thinkers did not conceptualize freedom in this low base way. They wanted people to become to a higher ideal of gentlemanness, of glory. They wanted something much higher. Just because they didn't want the dogmas of the Catholic Church does not mean that they would want addicts half naked rolling around in the street and then say it's perfectly okay because, freedom. No, this is an inversion. Anyone who wants drugs to be easily accessible, where children can see addicts do things in the streets, where people think an officer or a social worker should go to these people and be like, geez, man, what now? It's an awful thing. It's an awful vice to spread in society. So when you hear an atheist like TJ Kump or TJ the Amazing Atheist, aka TJ Kirk, make it sound like cools are drugs, yeah dude, do it, yeah, I want you to remember how those people reacted on Flaka. Okay? How they looked just, whoa, like that's like something out of a zombie movie. Remember who advocated for that. Which political party in America advocated for that? Which senators said, yes, do it? Who? Who? It's a very important thing. Who benefits from having those people like that in the population? Is that a friend to humanity? A friend to families? Imagine you're pregnant and there's some high weirdo in the street who got drugs from someone who purchased it legally. And they're out there and you're by yourself. The same people who want that to happen to you are the same ones who say you should have a harder time getting the Second Amendment to protect yourself. They don't allow educational videos on Second Amendment issues to get put on social media, so you don't really get to learn how to be a better shooter or how to, fix something, and they make it harder for you to find a very educated instructor. They twist everything and then promote the worst musicians and the worst role models, and then they promote these leftists who don't get censored. I'm not saying they should be censored, but I'm just trying to contrast what's going on. And then they harness on the religious people for hate speech and primitive thinking and all this stuff. But then they openly promote in these leftist laptop class, university echo chamber centers who sit around in their think tanks and say, what's the next policy we can push through and get votes for certain politicians' campaigns. And even some libertarians, unfortunately, have said, as long as you're not harming anybody else, you should have that. That's a huge vice for society. Huge vice. So, whenever they gaslight you and say, we're not advocating for that, just keep track of how many leftists and atheists advocate for the legalization of all drugs and how they want to strip you of your Second Amendment rights, how they mock you if you are pro 2A, and how they want to defund police. Okay? You have to be smarter. You have to be wiser. Okay? Just because some former criminal and former drug addict was caught up in the streets and caused a bunch of riots, you should not be a moron and then think you don't need cops in your neighborhood as the economy collapses and as more and more depressed people are turning to drugs. You do need officers to patrol the streets. You do need your ability to defend yourself. Okay? You cannot sit there and think nothing's going to happen to me. It'll never happen in my country. Silicon Valley is a very powerful monopoly on information. Google, all these search engines, Apple, all of them, they source their workers from the same types of schools. They have meetings to get the sort of same mission and philosophy statement for the company. They know what they're doing and how to get to their ends. They're not neutral in their affairs. They are very slanted towards one way. So, my point is I just want you to research overreactions or people high on flakka, and I just want you to look at that and ask yourself, is that glorious? Is that righteous? Is that good? We as religious folk obviously understand it's not. But when you see these people who are flopping around, screaming, biting themselves, harming themselves, take that example, and when you see a smug atheist say, drugs are great, drugs are this, and that, you can say, really? You'll have more passion inside of you because your eyes witness something so horrific. No ruler who loves their nation would ever advocate for such substances to be easy access, and meth is not far off from that. Cocaine usage, crack is not far off from that. Okay? We have to remember, these lab coats who go rogue, they are very good chemists. They can easily be hired by the cartels to make things. You have to keep a huge eye on the ethics of certain people who, when they leave their profession, can go work for a cartel to manufacture new forms of drugs. Chemicals are a very powerful drug, and they can be shaped and, produced in so many different ways. A blunt is not going to be the same as flakka, okay? So my point is, you have these substances of the earth. Do not let the atheists and the liberals combine those two issues, because what they'll do is you'll say, oh, well, do you really want someone put in jail for weed? And you'll say, they can quit that pretty easy, so, we can work with that. Few people get addicted to weed, so we can work with them. They don't deserve, 6 years in jail. But what then they do, behind marijuana, they're going to put something else, and something else, and something else. And then, their pork bill type of processing is they stuff a bunch of stuff in these bills. So when it's passed, it's so long, thousands of pages long, no one reads it, and then there's all this other provisions in there. So you have to be very specific with people when you're saying, well, what do you mean by drugs? Because the opiates are also harming a lot of people that were overprescribed by doctors themselves. Handing out like candy, Oxycontin, writing prescriptions too easily for very potent painkillers, and people would doctor shop. They'd go to one doctor, then one doctor complain of this pain, that pain, get a bunch of pills, and then sell them and then use them themselves, and before you know it, we have people addicted to pills. So doctors not doing their ethical duty, cause a lot of problems. It's getting better in some states, but corruption of certain doctors, or their just lack of caring, cause a lot of these issues. So, research how people behave on flakka and ask yourself, what if that was your daughter? What if that was your son? Or God forbid, it was your husband, and you're pregnant, you got no weapon, slow police time, and he's high in the living room. And you got no one to help you. You never know how Allah is going to test you. You never know how Iblis is going to cause a problem for you. So we must be vocal and not feel shame when we tell these leftist atheists, we don't want this type of intoxicants in our society. No. They say, oh, you want them to go to jail if they use this? How are they going to get help? Mandatory rehab. You know what? Don't guilt trip me in order to manipulate me into allowing you to sell these products. Punishment is punishment. Punishment is punishment. They are manipulating us to feel soft for these addicts. Look at the underlying issues. Look at this, look at that. Hey, hold on. You're not going to make drugs legal so that all of us in regular, polite society got to deal with a bunch of addicts running around like rabbits. Okay, let me give you more examples. If you go look at the street people of Los Angeles, there's a lot of channels now documenting drug addicts walking in the road, riding bikes naked. It's become normalized, but it's causing a lot of problems for parents to feel safe. We have to make sure that we don't allow all of the United States or other countries to turn into what California has done to their major cities. That, or New York City. Look how these Democrat leftists have allowed their states to crumble. The activist woke university laptop class, their theories have been applied. We have seen it. I want you to know how these people respond so that you have the passion inside of you to say, you know what? We don't want that in our society. That's not cool. You think that's nice? You think you can do that in moderation? You think we should allow this in our culture? You think this is good to be around children? You think this is safe for families? And remember, if they win their agenda, you need to have the Second Amendment. Don't let them scare you into taking it away. They're giant hypocrites. Giant hypocrites. A lot of those people have private security. They're wealthy in a very gated community. They also listen to the artists who promote this type of random killing. Their ethics don't line up. It doesn't line up. You need something to protect yourself as a mother. You need it. As a man needs to be able to protect his family. If you are home alone and you got one of those weirdos outside and the police have, they're defunded so they can't respond enough in time, you have to be locked and loaded. Don't let your kids become traumatized because leftist atheists allowed more drug use to pass through. The border is open. The border is wide open. Harris, the worst VP in American history, has totally collapsed it. And if we want to put a wall, they'll build tunnels. But a wall would do something. But they say that's racist. So drugs are flowing in. Flowing in. And if you talk about it, leftists call you a racist. Meanwhile, all the people who have children who are raised in single parents, their kids are falling victim like flies to these drugs. But leftists will say you're a racist if you want a border, you must hate Mexicans. When Mexicans are suffering heavily from their kids being addicted to drugs, making it legal is not going to stop people from using drugs. Do you want your kid to be part of their weird social experiment? Pointing to one country that legalized all drugs. Do you want your kid to have access to those hardcore stuff? You want it to be easier? No. Addiction should be rooted out of society constantly and not be promoted. So check out how these people behave on Flocka and ask yourself, in a situation like that, you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared. And if you're going to come to America, you have to be ready for those kind of situations. And that's another reason why we have to leave the cities. And when those liberals come to the rural areas, you have to say you can't vote the same way. Community coming together and saying you're not bringing your woke, leftist, drug lust here to our happy, healthy, stable, peaceful, harmonic community. This is what we have to do. And if more parents, the fathers at work, but the mothers come back, keep an eye on their kids. You can't do it all the time, I understand. But more of an eye, and be bold in checking their kids' pockets and stuff, we can change the culture. We can change it. We have to. So be brave and don't be shy when it comes to not thinking drugs are cool, which I know what you're thinking probably. We don't. But I want you to understand what is happening, what is occurring. These are real things. These leftists talk about it openly when you interview them. They're very soft men who are dirty perverts, who are closeted addicts, and who have no righteousness in them, but they have a platform. They have an angle of power. And it's our duty to keep up the pressure so that they cannot encourage the youth to go to drugs. One of my criticisms of Joe Rogan is he always promotes DMT to young men, psychedelics, and he's always drinking. If you watch him, you have to be careful. Just listen to the audio in the background so that you don't constantly want to smoke cigars, smoke weed, drink whiskey, talk about, DMT, all that stuff, it can really make you go out of your mind. Drugs affect everyone differently, and some people don't come back from their mind fracturing. And I know I have addicts all in my family. You have to do so much work to keep them sober. They have breakdowns where they are like and you're like, calm down. It's not cool. So for liberals to want to make that more prominent, and how traumatizing it is for kids to see these addicts. It is traumatizing. So when a leftist atheist says Muslims are bad because they're not fun and don't allow these kind of drugs, just recognize how little these atheists have this love for children. They want kids to be around these addict parents. If you didn't want it, you would fight against it. But they fight for it. They fight for it. They want a mom to have access to these drugs. She gets high, her kids witness her overdose. They witness her like this. We already have to work hard to get these mothers to stop drinking. To stop eating fast food, to become healthy again. And here are the liberal atheists making it even harder with their woke policies. So check out that Flocka. How do people react on Flocka? People high on Flocka. So that you can see the image in your head. And you'll be able to endure, inshallah, the laughter of the liberal atheists. When you may be alone by yourself and they surround you and they mock you, they dogpile you online, whatever they do, you'll have Allah, and you'll have that image of you're a liar. You'll know that they're this dirty, filthy energy, and you have more energy to fight them off. Whew, I watched several, like an hour's worth of those types of videos. And it really gives you a deep passion of just like, I'm tired of these drugs in our culture. I'm tired of the people who make it sound cool. I'm tired of people like Bill Maher and other mainstream people who make drugs seem so cool and hip. No, man. We cannot be shy to say it. We'll be if we're old and we're surrounded by addicts, subhanallah, it's going to be dangerous for us. When empires fall, it ain't pretty. And Biden has done horrible work on our country. And we have some of the worst corrupt senators right now who don't care about us. And corporations are really causing more division in our society. And tech companies are blocking us from having open dialogue. So we are in a deep ideological wrestling match. So if you know that the leftists are advocating this stuff, you need to be emboldened. Common sense is on our side, but you need to have that passion, and that passion will come from witnessing those videos. So have a good day, fam. I'm gonna go make some pad thai noodles and think even more.